of the series is to give people in our community who come from diverse backgrounds or who help to make a difference here in South Louisiana an opportunity to tell their story, to express themselves, to talk about where they come from and where they're going. The first question I want to start off with, and I always start off with, is the simplest one, and that is, where are you from? Where are you coming from?
So originally, I was born in Brussels, Belgium. So that's where I'm from.
So Belgium is a country that I'm familiar with. I've been very fortunate to go to Belgium when I was younger, but I can't necessarily say that a lot of Americans may be familiar with Belgium or know a lot about Belgium. So tell me more about Belgium and specifically, what it was like growing up in Belgium for you.
Well, Belgium is definitely, as you said, many times when I tell people I'm from Belgium, I can read in their eyes that they are just like, okay, where is that country? I might have heard this word Belgium that kind of rings a bell, but where is it exactly? What do they speak over there? So it's true, the same thing. And I have to explain, it's about France. We're a bilingual country, just like Canada. So that makes us a little bit interesting, I guess, that we have two, speaking communities. Well, actually three, but the two main ones are Dutch, the Flemish or the Dutch and the French in the South. And so I always have to explain people. And it's at some point it gets kind of tiring because I remember one time I was so tired that I would say, I'm from Paris. And then when you say I'm from Paris, people just, oh, okay, I see what that is. That's fine. And they don't ask another question. But anyways, so how was it going there? Well, I guess it wasn't the worst for sure. It's a country where unfortunately rain is typical, so you really have to be okay with bad weather in general. Cold, rain, snow. It might look great in movies, when you wake up and you see your garden with the snow, but when you get to go to work and then the roads are closed, or when you have to use your umbrella, let's say 5 days out of 7, it doesn't get as pretty as, it might be in a movie or romantic or whatever. And I'm saying this because when I came to Louisiana, I was just like, wow, so much daylight, so much sun. That's a big change for me. But someone from southern France would not look at it this way because he would be like, oh yeah, it's just like southern France. It's sunny and we got to have nice beach and whatever. But so that was a difference for me. And that's something, let's say, I'll start with something disappointing. So the weather is really depressing at some point. What's great is that, being born in Brussels, it's such a cosmopolitan city that you get to see or meet a lot of people from all over the world. It's also the European capital because all the European institutions are located in Brussels. So you can meet people that you would probably not meet in another city because this, again, a lot of lobbies, a lot of journalists. That makes the city interesting. A lot of exhibitions, a lot of different types of restaurants. So you can try a lot of cultures. Let's say a little bit like New York, where you have the world in a city. That makes it interesting. So growing up in that environment that was something cool about it. Now I grew up in a very quiet neighborhood, though. I was like on the southeast side of Brussels in a parish called Woluwe-Saint-Pierre, where you don't see a lot of let's say crimes, or you don't hear terrible stories. So it was quite peaceful, definitely. Now, and that's where when you grow up, it's always a place that will stay with you wherever you go. You can't take that out of you. You can go out of that place, but that place will never get out of you. Of course, all of my best friends, I met them there, all my family. Like I said, it's not the worst place. I guess it's not the best, but now with time and distance, I can also have a better reading or evaluation of the place I grew up and everything. And no, it's definitely a nice spot. Yeah. A lot of Americans, I guess, they probably they don't know that the Smurfs are Belgian. They don't know that Tintin is Belgian. There are a lot of things like Godiva, the chocolate. A lot of things people don't maybe expect it, but it's from Belgium, and we're just not too good at, let's say, selling ourselves. Belgians are not proud enough, I think, and so French people would kind of take over in some time. Like I remember students saying, "Oh, the Smurfs, it's French, right?" And I was like, "Well, it's in French, but it's from Belgium." And they were like, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Just because it's in French, people would not make the difference. Like, oh, well, it's in French, but wait, it might not necessarily be from France. Like Nirvana, they sing in English, but they're not from Britain. And And so sometimes it's good to kind of let people know, like, no, hey, look, I know we're a small country, but we did a couple of great things. Like, the Smurfs were very famous, and yeah, we're kind of proud of our little blue creatures. That's just an example among others.
I am in shock right now. Wait till I tell my mom, because she loved the Smurfs and she grew up with the Smurfs. Wait till I tell her that she was watching a Belgian cartoon. That's so funny. But I did not know the Smurfs were Belgium. I knew that fries came from Belgium and waffles came from Belgium. And I also know that there's a chocolate scene in Belgium. I know that there's also fashion, like Antwerp is a fashion capital, but Belgium is not a place that a lot of people on this side of the world are familiar with. So I'm giving you your time to sell Belgium and just kind of talk about it with me. I wanted to ask about pop culture. Like, what are some things that are popular, and like what kind of Belgian music is popular? What are people like? Just talk to me about Belgium's culture and art and all that good stuff.
What's amazing is that the French-speaking singer that sold still so far the most records is still Jacques Brel, and he's from Belgium, which probably aggravates the French. He's the first one who also got the Carnegie Hall in New York filled. So we're really proud of, in our culture, of our musicians. We might not have a lot of them because, friendly reminder, Belgium is only 11 million inhabitants, and you only have about 5 French-speaking. So we have more, or even 4 actually, I have to double check, but we have more Dutch-speaking Belgian or Flemish-speaking Belgian than French-speaking Belgian. So for a small population, when you think about it, 4 or 5 million, that's not a lot. I think even Quebec is 11, or it's twice our size. Like Quebec has Céline Dion, for example, if you talk about music. But again, we're very proud of our Jacques Brel, and we're extremely proud for this past 10 years of Stromae, of course. I mean, can you imagine? I think he's the first French-speaking singer who got the Madison Square in New York completely full for a concert. That's quite an achievement for a guy that is probably not being played on most of the radios down here in this country. As a matter of fact, I remember last year I went to some like a nightclub bar kind of in Lafayette, and then I heard a song and I was like, wait, is it him? And that was actually a song from Stromae that the DJ would play. He had no idea that, of course, Stromae was Belgian or whatever. He just kind of realized the song was not in English, but the beat was so good. And this guy, I mean, we're proud of him. I think you know Stromae. We talked about this one time, didn't we?
When I was in college, he was very popular, and his music was, popular among some of my French and Francophone friends. So yeah.
I mean, I remember in my immersion school, all the students knew his songs. They were singing them when we took a trip to France. It was quite impressive lately on the music scene how Belgium just raised, So like I said, Stromae and Jacques Brel are probably the top 2. Now we have other great singers also that are very popular. What's interesting when you talk about, let's say, a Belgian culture is like you pretty much have 3 cultures in the same country, which I mean, like, the Cajuns, for example, they're not exactly like what we would consider the American culture. They're different, right? It's like this part of Louisiana is very different, I think, from, let's say, Los Angeles or Miami. It's extremely, you get the Cajun root thing. And in Belgium, when you look at the situation, it's because a Dutch-speaking Belgian is not at all like a French-speaking Belgium, and there's only 20 minutes that separates them. It's a ridiculous distance, but you see a different perspective of life, way to live life, celebrate life, the music they listen to, the any type of artist. So it's interesting to see that in such a small part of the world, because Belgium is, I think, 10 times smaller than Louisiana, to give you an idea. It's a very small country. At least it's 10 times smaller than France for sure. And you have this French Walloon speaking culture, this Brussels culture, kind of like the true people from Brussels that speak French with an influence of the Dutch, and then you have the Dutch speaking Belgian. So when you're asking me what is popular, I can only talk from, let's say, the French speaking Belgian standpoint, because I wasn't born in Antwerp, for example. I didn't go to school with Dutch teachers. So, and I know that these people listen to their own singers that I don't know much of because they're not being played on French-speaking Belgian radio stations. So it's a really interesting find when I look at it from the outside. It's that little lab kind of with a lot of things going on in such a small part of the world. But anyway, so what's popular is, of course, we're very proud of our fries, that's for sure. And believe it or not, we have a lot of sauces. So not just the mayo, but we have sauces like Dallas, Dickeneck, Samurai, Andalus that that I don't think you can even find on here. But if you just Google Belgian sauce to, to give some company to your fries or your meat or whatever, it's quite impressive. We're so proud of our beers. We have more than 500 types of beers. Can you imagine for a country that is so small? It's quite impressive. So we have also artists that we are proud of, like Bruegel, and of course Magritte. Magritte is our number one. You probably have seen the guy with the apple, le fils de l'homme. There's like a guy like standing like this, and he has an apple in his face. Or you've probably seen the one with the pipe saying "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." This is not a pipe.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I don't think I've seen that one, but I think I may have, but I'm not quite sure.
I'm pretty sure you have. This so, world recognized as, it's really like a very respected worldwide artist. He passed away, of course, now. But so we do, like, of course, I mean, like every, I guess, culture, we were proud of our artists, our singers. Maybe not our politicians because they sound more like a joke, but in sports, we have some great athletes. Like lately, Kim Clijsters, the tennis player who used to be number one at some point, or at least in top three WTA. I think she's back. She's back on courts lately, and she won like 5 different championships in a row past month. It's quite impressive. We're part of the Belgian Red Devils. I don't know if you guys, like soccer, but we ended up at third position at the last World Cup, and we could have, sorry to say, but we could have won it. It was so ridiculous that we lost to France 1-0. It was crazy. Terrible game. But Belgium, I would say, these past 10 years has a lot of reasons to be proud of itself. On the rap scene, we have a lot of rappers that are just doing great in other French-speaking countries that are very respected. I think of Damso. I think of Caballero and Jean Jass. I think of Romeo Elvis, who even came to America to shoot some of his movie clips. So all of these things are quite popular. Angèle, she's, oh my God, she's on the front page of that French magazine the past week. You probably heard some of her songs. She's the sister of Romeo Elvis, and her name is Angèle, and she's like super listened by teenagers or older people, in France, Belgium, Switzerland, I guess Canada or French-speaking African countries. Well, we got our things going on that we're proud of. We don't hide.
When I was learning French, and even still today, a lot of the French language music I listen to either comes from Canada or Belgium. So
Really?
in Canada, it was basically, like Celine Dion and her French records. But in Belgium, Stromae, Moran, Laura Fabian, French, a lot of like French speaking Belgian people. But I'm not going to lie, in America, you're more likely to hear Spanish language because we're so close to Mexico and Latin America, and we have a lot of Hispanic people in the US, so you're more likely to hear Spanish language music on the radio than you are French language songs and stuff like that. But the French language music is still popping, so I encourage people watching to go look up these artists and kind of figure out what you like and what you don't like. I also wanted to dig a little deeper, and when you mentioned the idea of linguistic and cultural differences, because in America, it's very obvious that we have not always gotten along when it comes to cultural differences. And so I'm curious to know what these linguistic and cultural differences look like in Belgium, and if there's any conflict between Francophone Belgians and Flemish Belgians. Because I've read a lot, but I want to hear from your perspective.
There's something funny. A lot of communities, well, the Flemish-speaking communities and the Walloon, to be exact, but it's pretty much French. They do have conflicts, unfortunately. When it comes to, let's say, let's say you live officially you live in the Flemish part of Belgium, but you don't speak Flemish. So I think it's your right as a minority to get all of your administrative papers in your own language, which would be French. But some politicians, some separatists, as we call them, Flemish, are like, no. If you live on the let's say the Flemish speaking side, and you have to learn Dutch, you have to speak it. That's just how it's gonna be. We're not gonna give you any facilities or whatever. So you do have, unfortunately, tensions. Back in the 60s, I think French-speaking students were kicked out of a Dutch-speaking university because, they just being brainwashed, or some politicians put ridiculous ideas in young people's mind. They don't think twice, and they start believing what they hear. The economy, I guess it's also, sometimes a lot of things are, connected, unfortunately, to money. And I know that the economy of Flanders is, of course, more flourished than the Walloon one. It wasn't always that way, but for the past 20 years it is. And so when a politician tells a Flemish guy, with all the taxes that you pay, a Walloon guy gets a car pretty much paid with your money taken out of your taxes. Because a lot of, unfortunately, Flemish politicians, because it's complicated. We have like three governments, like local, and then one where, all the languages meet. It's a really a lab. It's interesting. It was kind of surrealist at some point. They would say stuff like, we need to separate, Flanders needs to become a country, let the Walloon go or be reattached to France or whatever. So you do have, unfortunately, tensions. And if you go to like lost villages deep in Flanders and you start speaking French, you might unfortunately hear someone say, what you doing here? You're supposed to speak in Dutch. What is this? It sounds all pretty much like somehow a language racism, which is, to me, absolutely ridiculous. And I would say that the Walloons are not the same way. Like, they're not going to be vindictive or separatist. Like, they don't want to separate or become their own country. Plus, what's funny about Belgium, we have those linguistic conflicts and communities that, have tensions, but the national motto is being united is being strong. So I don't know if you see how contradictory this can be. And what's funny also is that when the Belgian national soccer team plays, out of a sudden everyone feels Belgian. They're not going to say I'm Flemish or I'm Walloon or I'm from Brussels. No, like, out of a sudden we're all Belgian, we all get along. And language is not a problem no more. That's the beauty of soccer as sports. It reunites its people behind the same flag or whatever. I mean, just to make a comparison, I guess when Serena Williams won Roland Garros or whatever, I guess every American tennis player or lover were happy about it, no matter if she was blue like the Smurfs or black or white or whatever. We were just happy she was American. She won like one of the Wimbledon, like one of the most prestigious tennis tournament. So you see, all those tensions and conflicts or problems, to me, are just. I'm glad that sports can just make those problems look really stupid and unnecessary. Because honestly, okay, it's not the same language, but our country was created with the idea, okay, we can learn from each other, not the same language, but hey, it's like something rich that we can benefit from. Look at Canada. Now, Canada, for what I've heard, also has tensions. For what I've heard, a lot of English-speaking Canadians are not sometimes too calm with the French-speaking Canadians. But for what I've heard, now I've never been. You will always find that type of people. It's sad, but that's just how it is.
As you said earlier, it's ignorance, and the ignorance stops us from being able to see our humanity. But sports helps us to rediscover our humanity, because can't really separate if you're all rooting for the same team. I mean, I know that, and I'm not really a big sports person, but I know for a fact that when the Saints play, everyone is a Louisianian. Everyone's a Saints fan. Even no matter your politics, your identity, everybody is united and
that's it,
rooting around the same team. Since we're talking about Louisiana, you were born and raised in Belgium, and then you came to Louisiana and came to the U.S. So walk me through your journey of coming from the country of Belgium and then coming to America and to Louisiana.
I'll try to make it short. In 1991, my parents took me on a trip, but I was, I guess, 5 or 6 years old, to New York, and my mom kept telling me that I was just pretty much like a kid that you would take to a huge toy store. You were like, a lot of stars in your eyes. You were under the spell of this city. There was just something going on. You were just in love, let's say, with the city of New York and all that it presented, whatever. Then my granddad, who used to live where the Battle of the Bulge pretty much happened in World War II, also had a lot of love and let's say gratefulness for the Americans because they were the saviors, from the Nazi. So there's always been some, let's say, some love or admiration, fascination at some point for America and its whole, and then of course, we're not gonna lie, Europeans teenagers are definitely Americanized. They listen to American music, they wear American brands, they drink American products, they watch American movies, series. So we can't deny it. There's a huge Americanization of at least the Western European countries, which I mean, it's perfectly fine, no problem. So in all of that, there was no way for me not to keep on loving. Like my love could only grow, my interest, let's say, could only keep on growing for America. Now, of course, it was tougher back in 20. I think it was 24 when war hit after, with the Bush era. That was, sorry to be honest, but it wasn't easy to say I love America when why would they go to war? Why would they do this? Gosh, gosh, gosh. But then, anyways, in 2003, that's I think when the Louisiana connection truly happened. So my parish, so the side of Brussels that I was born in and lived in, grew up in, is twinned with a town called New Iberia. It's a small town. Well, actually, it's actually a famous town because that's where Tabasco is being produced. So, like I said, I keep saying all the time that New Iberia is pretty much on every table of this planet because a lot of countries do have Tabasco. They just don't pay attention where it's made or where it's from. But it's probably from New Iberia, which is a small town in, like George Rodrigue, the Blue Dog painter. A few people know that he's from New Iberia, which the city can be proud of. Anyways, so I was there for like a twin, those twin exchange thing. You go there for 2 weeks. Since the cities are twin, they send their kids and you experience the life in a family. It was really awesome. I was hosted by the Armentors who just, I was, I guess, 15 or 14 in 2003. I was really impressed. Everything was bigger, was different. The sun, the big cars, the big houses. Well, it was easy for me to dream. So, anyways, then back in 2004, I went back. Also, well, by myself, but I happened to be there when the group of that year was also there, the group of Belgian students. So usually like 5 or 6 students with a chaperone. Then back in 2011, the mayor of my parish called me. He was like, look, we know how much you like this twin thing. Would you like to be the chaperone? Would you like to go again? And you would just have to take care of the kids and, take them from places to places, but everything is paid for you. Would you like that? I said, oh my God, of course. Yeah, I would love it. And that's when the big thing happened. I met this gentleman called my American dad, Mr. Ebro Rio, who told me about this Coderfield program, that would hire teachers, French speaking teachers to come here and teach. And I was like, oh, really? And then, luck, God, whatever, just I guess it was my path of life. In April 2012, I went to that interview with Miss Terry Hammond, Peggy Feehan, and I think Anne-Sophie Wary from WBI, which is Wallonie Bruxelles International. They are connected. They are, let's say, they work with Cotterfield to hire teachers. And that was it. The true journey truly started. So I landed here in July 2012. And since then, here I am. So eight years actually. Yeah, we're in July. So yeah, basically 8 years. Exactly 8 years now. So I've been enjoying gumbo, jambalaya, crawfish etouffee, Creole, Cajun culture. Meet a lot of people. Life's been good. Can't complain.
I know you've been here for a while, but I'm happy to have you, and
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're able to find this as a place that you call home. But I can't help but wonder what it was like to have your first taste of America be a city like New York, which is, as you described, has some similarities to Brussels, but then to settle in a place like Louisiana, which is the very opposite of New York. So what would you say have been some of the things that you've had to make major adjustments on as far as living in Louisiana, being from Belgium?
To be fully honest, I do, of course, share a lot of love for Louisiana. I've been here for 8 years. But after this time, I realized I'm more of a city guy. And so a major adjustment or something I had to put up with is living in the countryside. My first year, I was in Baton Rouge, which, is a city, but like you said, is nothing like New York or not even New Orleans. Now that I look back, I think that the best place in Louisiana that would, let's say, meet my criteria and where I would feel, as we say in French, as a fish in the sea, to translate the expression literally, it would be, of course, New Orleans. I mean, every time I go to New Orleans, I just feel extremely comfortable because this is to me a true city with everything that a city can bring or offer in terms of culture, open-mindedness, exhibitions, facilities. I don't think you need a car, entertainment. So a major adjustment, especially when I came to Lafayette, which is don't get me wrong, it's a town with you know their roots run deep. There's a lot of Cajun culture, of course, and it's cute, if I may say. It has a lot of perks, but when you even compare Lafayette to Brussels, it's pretty much a village to a city. Um, so I had to really accept the idea that, hey, look, you're in the country here. This is not Brussels, this is not New York or Miami or LA. This is really a countryside town. You're gonna need a car for anything. They don't have tons of bars or shops, so it will pretty much be the same place that you will go over and over again. So, but something that surprised me was the kindness of people, let's say, and just you can't win on both boards, as we say in French. All that the city offers, of course, you're gonna miss it, but the people in Lafayette or even Baton Rouge are maybe sometimes more interesting in terms of a deeper connection you can have, and really this hospitality. I know people mention it a lot, but it's actually true. The Cajuns, because we would connect with bond with the French language, of course, and then some of these people have their children in immersion school. So if you're the immersion teacher, all of a sudden they see you as a friend, pretty much. Like how many guys have or people have told me like, hey, you need to come home and eat with us, which is something that would not happen right away in big cities, I believe. People would not be that familiar. It's another vibe. So that was a good adjustment, let's say. But the toughest one was really the idea of you in the country. You're not in my definition, what I consider a true city or a real city. That was a major adjustment. And the car, oh my God, that you need the car for, even in Baton Rouge, you need a car for anything. Unless you live on LSU campus, maybe not, but you want to go to the mall, you need a car for anything. And at some point, that gets really tiring. When you used to walk everywhere as a European, I'm about to hate cars in general now, or the use of a car, let's say.
There are a lot of adjustments I think that Europeans have to make coming to America because we're a very car heavy country. I mean, unless you live in a city like New York or Washington, D.C. or Chicago, then,
Right.
you'll be fine. But if you live in a city in the Sun Belt, which is like the South and the West Coast, you will need a car. And if you don't, good luck, because it's very
Exactly.
difficult to get around.
Exactly.
And yeah, and I resonate with this idea of like going from living in a very urbanized place to a less urbanized place and how rough of an adjustment that can be and weird at times because I went to graduate school in New England and I
Hmm.
lived and grew up in Baton Rouge, but the city I moved from when heading to New England was New Orleans. So I had to go from New Orleans to this small New England town. And I was like, this is not
You didn't like
something
it?
that I enjoyed it in the end. But when I first moved there, I didn't enjoy it as much. It wasn't
Right.
very diverse. I'm used to being around people that are very different from me all the time. So it was very weird to be the only Black person everywhere I went. It was very small.
Oh,
I
like
mean,
this.
you can go through the city in like 5 minutes. It was a very small town, but when you find the value in every place you are, you get to see the beauty in it, no matter how big or small it is. Because honestly, I don't know if I could live in a big city like, New York or Brussels, because I am someone who is good in the middle. You know, I don't want a small town, but a big, big city with millions of people where you'll be forgotten about and lost. I don't know if I want to live there either. You know, something that's big enough to be urban, but also
Right.
get some green space and get some space, you know. So
No,
that's just something I
like,
would adjust to.
no, and don't get me wrong. I mean, because New York is, I mean, Brussels could also be, in a way, a village compared to New York. But it make me think of my mom when she, my mom was in love with Paris, but for whatever reason, she says, I love going there and spend a week or two, but I could not live like on a daily basis. It's too much. It's too busy. It's too alive. It's just nonstop. So I like when you say that you like, let's say, average or middle, like not something too small, because Lafayette would be to me too small, and then New York too big. So in the middle, I think New Orleans would be a good average. Like, don't you think? Like,
Yeah.
I'm that's a city that I really learned to love. So much culture, so much happen. It's a city with a soul. New Orleans is just something amazing to me.
I wanted to go back to your experience as a teacher because you mentioned that you came with Codafil and they were looking for French teachers. And I met you as a teacher when you were
Mhm.
teaching. So I want to learn more about your experience being a French teacher and, you know, what are some things that you learned as a teacher? I know it sounds oxymoronic, but, you know, what are some things you learned from your experience being a teacher and what else you're involved in?
When I started off back in 20, so it was 2009 actually. I was at first a Dutch teacher. So I was teaching Dutch to high school students for 3 years, and these are the requirements. I mean, if you want to be hired by Cutterfield, you have to have 3 years of experience behind you minimum. Which was my case. Teaching Dutch to French-speaking Belgians, high schoolers. My last school was probably, yeah, the one that I keep the best memory of, but it wasn't that easy in terms of this is a reality that I'm about to reveal. A lot of French speaking Brussels teenager are not too keen to learn Dutch, like they're not too much into it, so they don't put too much effort in general. They don't like, on the opposite, when it turns to English class, they absolutely love learning and want to learn English because they want to understand the song they listen to or the movies they watch, things like that. But the reality with Dutch is that it's more something like, hey, if you live in Brussels, you have to speak. It would be better for you for a job to know the other language that is being official, which is Dutch, and then English. So most of the Belgians are trilingual, I would say, or at least bilingual. But it wasn't that easy to keep your class motivated. And like I told you, it's very cosmopolitan. So my last school, I had, out of, let's say, 20 students, maybe 10 of them at least were from a very different background. One was from Poland, another one from, let's say, Romania. So when I remember one dad, he came to me once and he said, look, do not take it personally if my son is not too much into the idea of learning Dutch, because when he's going to turn 18, he's going to go back anyway to Poland and study there. So there's no big motivation, let's say, for him, or interest to learn a language that he's not going to speak over there, because the problem with Dutch is that, where do you speak it? In the Netherlands and in Belgium. Well, South Africa, kind of, and a couple of islands where they all speak English anyway. So the motivation rate is extremely low. And when you have to motivate or buy, let's say, that thing to your students, it's quite something. So what I did like and learn about teaching French in another country, especially my first school, it was an immersion school. Kids were really into it. They were like, oh yeah, we want to learn French. My grandfather was a Cajun and I want to speak French to him so bad. I hate to have to speak in English with him all the time. I want to get back to my roots or reconnect with my history, what's in my blood. So that's something I learned. I was like, wow, teaching French abroad gives me more satisfaction, but it's also something more desired apparently by most of the students, especially in immersion schools. You're gonna tell, but it probably makes sense, but still, when you do have a motivated public in front of you, it also impacts you in a way that you feel like okay, I'm gonna find a great activity, or I'm gonna try to find a great movie we can watch and learn about culture. Like it motivates you also as a teacher to really give the best of yourself, because you do have like a response from your students or a demand. So that's something amazing that I came to realize, and that's why I really enjoy being a French teacher uh, in that school, you know. Now then I went to a private school, and I had a chance, you know, because I also speak Spanish, so they gave me that nice opportunity to teach Spanish, which is, you know, we have to be, you said that earlier with the music, it's definitely taking over a lot of places. When you call AT&T, when you go to any shops, even let's say you want to call Slemco or whatever, your energy or whatever, there's always, if you want Spanish, press number 8, you know, prima el ocho. So this country is turning slowly but surely bilingual, right? You go to South Texas, I remember they all speak Spanish. It's incredible. And you can tell they have this, you know, they kind of look also Spanish speaking, or they come from a Spanish background, which doesn't bother me at all because I speak Spanish. But in my private school, I would say that unfortunately the French, or the interest for French classes was not as big or as important as in immersion schools, unfortunately. For example, out of 3 classes, I had 19 students this past year. One class with 10, one class with 7, one class with 2, which was AP class. For Spanish classes, you have at least 20 students per class, at least. So that's something I came to realize also, that Spanish in at least private schools is definitely taking over. Again, like I said, it's great to teach French in immersion schools here, because you do feel the interest coming from the students and the parents and all those people around us, Télé Louisiane, the American Journal of French Studies, Alliance Française, all those people that do their best to keep French alive, and I support them 2000%. You know, it's just awesome. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've seen this. And I mean, I also work for Alliance Française. I just help Télé Louisiane as much as I can. All those people down here, you know, with Cajun culture, the Lâche Pas, shops like Parish Ink that also do amazing jobs with French scription on their shirts. So we have to Lâche Pas. We cannot give up, of course. And as a teacher, something I learned here that is pretty amazing, and that I noticed, is how proud all those Cajun and all those people who fight for French and its survival. It's beautiful to see all those people behind their language, which is part of their culture. There's way more going on, like Outfest, LFLTA meetings. So I'm going to say it. Being a language teacher here, you sounds more serious than when I compare to Belgium. There's not much being done for the teachers who teach us Dutch. We don't have all those meetings or competitions that would maybe arise the level of motivation, of consideration. So we don't do a really great job at selling it, if I want to say, in Belgium, the Dutch language in French speaking schools, because Dutch speaking Belgians learn French. You get it? So that's something I also came to learn, like in America, or at least in Louisiana, when you're a French teacher, especially in immersion schools. Again, a lot is being done to help you and to give you some consideration, and that's something that I really appreciate and honor, and I'm grateful for. And teaching my own language is also something that I came to realize is actually easier, because you feel more powerful. You feel that you have more to bring. You just have basically to be yourself, because you are from your own culture and you are what you are. So even the way you talk, the way you count, when you do this, you know, with your fingers, I do like, because earlier you said 3 questions like this, and you showed me those 3 fingers. I would do like this, because we say 1, 2, 3. So even things that are so natural to me, I'm actually teaching my own culture just by, no, it might sound stupid, but trust me, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and y'all do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And kids notice, they're like, why would you start with the thumb? And I'm saying, well, that's just how we do. You know, I'm wearing the beret. That's not something that a lot of people, I would say, would do. So just little things. So teaching your own language unconsciously sometimes is also teaching your own culture, and it's something really cool, actually. And kids are interested, like, why would you wear this? Or why would you say that expression? Or why would you say hello this way? Because we don't really hug. It's just so many things that make it very interesting. I'll be honest, more than teaching Dutch, I like it even more being a teacher here of French than being a teacher of Dutch in Belgium. That's the truth. That's why I'm staying, basically.
No matter what language you learn, it always can challenge you as a person. You know, not
Right.
only can you learn about another culture when you learn another language, but you can also learn more about yourself and become more humble because you know how it feels to not be able to communicate. So, how do you kind of teach the idea of language not only being a way of understanding culture, but also being a way of understanding self and understanding compassion for human beings as well?
Now, definitely, you're right. And when you teach your own language, you also rediscover it, which is something very interesting. All those things that seem to be natural and normal that you wouldn't think of grammar wise, vocab wise, or expressions, especially idiomatic expressions, you rediscover your own. That's what's great about teaching another language. Um, Now, well, what I used to do, and kids liked it a lot, when I had those, let's say, cultural classes, kind of, I guess it would show students that the world cannot be summarized to their own community or their own country. That's just way more outside. You mentioned music, and I like that example. What saddens me a little bit here, when you turn a radio station, out of 10 songs, you're probably gonna have 9 in English and maybe 1 in Spanish, maybe, but not in French. 0 in French, or 0, unless you listen to like a Cajun typical radio station. But you won't hear a song in German or anything. When in Belgium, for example, you're gonna hear a lot of languages even on the radio. So you're exposed to a lot of different, well, of course, languages, but culture. So when you talk about compassion, or I guess showing them that the world is not just about America or Louisiana or about the Cajun culture, but there's way more, I guess it automatically or unconsciously let them understand that, okay, this is how we do things, this is how we think, this is how we live life, this is our conception, this is what we eat. But that doesn't mean that this is the truth and that this is the case everywhere else. And sometimes you don't even have to travel far to see something very different. That's something I came to realize about Europe. The Dutch culture, the French, the German, because Europe is pretty small when you look at it on the map, but you can just drive for 30 minutes and be in almost a total different environment, which is impressive and awesome at the same time to me. So I remember having kids who, for some of them, never really went outside of Baton Rouge or at least Louisiana, and I felt sad. So I was like, well, maybe I have an opportunity here in my classes to make them travel through, cultural projects, show them about the world, and eventually have them make that step, go to France, go to Congo, go to Canada. You can start with Canada if you want to stay on that part of the continent. Go to Martinique. Of course, I would put an emphasis on the French-speaking countries, but the world is way, is broader, is way bigger than that. And I guess learning about another culture makes you more humble, like you would say. It doesn't mean that your culture is better or less good than another one. It's just different. And learn about the word difference. We're different. That doesn't mean you better or you worse. It's just, and some people, they don't even know exactly everything about their own culture. So when they found out about the way people greet in France or what they eat for special occasions, or how they just, the posture that you have to have when you eat or when you talk to someone, the words you use, so many differences that make us all, to me, in my vision, extremely interesting. And I have a lot of African friends. I went to a party the other day. The African music scene is absolutely amazing, but we don't get to really know about it because it's not being played on the radio. So you have to dig a little bit. It's not as if we're not exposed to it, and I think we're missing a lot. And then all those dialects or languages that they have, it's just such a beautiful thing to me. It's great to teach them about culture, have them do some cultural projects, teach them about different things that people do or different way that they do things. But the best is to go there or to at least meet people from those cultures. And I guess when you will talk to those people or see them, interact with them, at least that's the effect that's going on with me. You feel more humble. You feel more, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, but this is so and so coming from another place, being who he is. And this is also so and so over there with its own values or way to look at things. And then communicate, talk, exchange. Oh, you look at it this way, or you do this way. Oh, that's interesting. Why? Or how do you feel about it? Hey, let me tell you how we do things or how we look at this. That's what makes us. Imagine if we were all the same, if the whole world was Cajun culture. And please, I have nothing against Cajun culture. I think they're awesome, but I'm so glad that Cajun culture is just for the Cajun country. Then you get the, let's say, cowboy culture in Texas or whatever, or the Mexican culture. It's awesome. It's so rich to me. If you want to have my humble opinion about it, you know.
When I went to France, I felt like I learned more about human beings more than French or even American culture. Since I didn't really speak French that well at the time I went, I had no choice but to be quiet and observe. And what I found is that a lot of French people were very similar to American people. And it wasn't to say that, oh, French people are becoming Americanized. It was, to me, I was thinking to myself, hey, you know, French people act like Americans because human beings are human beings, no matter where they
Of
are in
course,
the world. And so
that's
when I
true.
would see like little kids play, I was like, oh my God, they look like little kids in America. Or one time I was on a bus and there was this woman that was loud and cursing and all that kind of stuff. And the
Oh,
bus driver had to tell her to chill out. And I was like, well, I mean, we have that in America too. It's like human beings are human beings. And it
sure,
just so
sure.
happens that we have all these differences. I think the most beautiful thing about my organization A21 is that we want to tell people and encourage people to embrace the fact that we are similar, but our differences are what make us similar. So like we're human beings, but the reason why we are collectively human is because even though we are a part of this human race, we have so many
Mhm.
differences within our human race. So just like you and I are both human, but I'm, you know, this black guy speaking English from Louisiana, North Baton Rouge, and you're from Brussels, Belgium, who speaks like four languages. You know, but we're both human beings
Right.
existing in this and on this earth at the same time. It's a beautiful thing.
It is, it is, it is. Like we say, we're the same, we're differently all the same, or we all different but the same. You know, some things are definitely common. Like you said, we also have two eyes, two ears. We all need to, you know, go to the bathroom a couple times a day, eat, drink. Of course, a lot of things are a common denominator. But then I think what makes us, I don't like the word different. I want to use the word interesting, is that we have all the same needs pretty much, but we don't live life, of course, the exact same way because of our culture, or we don't look at things the exact same way. But when we start talking or having a great conversation, we can learn so much. And that open mindedness is just something amazing that makes you realize, hey, there are 360 degrees or angles to look at things, not just the Cajun way or the Belgian way or whatever. And you can grow. I think that's something amazing about, like you said, you went to France. I'm pretty sure it must have been a rich, an enrichment or an amazing experience in a lot of different levels, right? Even if France is not, like you just said, such of a huge cultural shock compared to, let's say, the Chinese culture. You know, if you had been to China for a year, I think, or Korea, or you know, in Asian countries, you would have been like, wow, it's not even the same alphabet. I mean, a lot of things are very different, but still, the human beings, of course. But when you compare Africa and America, you can find probably more common things than differences. You know what I mean? Even if there are differences, of course, we're not exactly the same. And thanks God, if we were all the same, it would be terrible. Like if we were exactly, you know, and if the world only spoke one language, oh gosh, it would be terrible to me.
Yeah, I was 19 when I went to France, and I think that in many ways I felt like the people that I interacted with in France didn't really see me as the American. They saw me as a young person. So like there were a lot of elders who would help me with French when I was in making mistakes in shops and in restaurants. You know, there were people that were very nurturing of me, even though I couldn't really understand them very well and they couldn't understand me. And in many ways, it made me realize that the relationships that I had with the people in France were not necessarily like culture to culture, but person to person, and how people who were older than me saw me as a young person to kind of guide and help navigate life and understanding myself, as opposed to, oh, this American, you know, here in France, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, you mean like they would not put you, let's say, in a cave like he's in the American caves with all, let's say, the good or bad stereotypes that people can have on Americans?
We have different dimensions of identity. We're not just Belgian or American
Mhm.
or our race. We are our race, our ethnicity, our nationality, our age, our gender, you know, our religion. And so, you know, there are many parts of our identity that can be different, but they can also complement others. So I feel as though I wasn't just seen as the American. I mean, obviously my Americanness came out when I would be the loudest person in the restaurant, or when I was making a whole bunch of mistakes in French, but I was a young person. So some people may have seen me as a young American. I was also Black. So in many ways, I was this exotic, you know, person in the room, because
Yeah.
there may have been Africans in France, but I was a Black person who spoke English and came from America. So that was another dynamic of intrigue for people. You know, there were so many dimensions of my identity that were more than just my nationality. And that was one thing I learned being abroad, that identity is complex. Throughout most of the interview, you talked about growing up in Belgium, which, though it's a small country, is a multilingual and multicultural place, and then teaching language and teaching culture both in Belgium and then also in America. But one thing that I've heard you express throughout most times in this interview is this desire for more people to embrace and understand other cultures and immerse themselves with other cultures. So I wanted to know, what was one thing you feel needs to be done for people, no matter where they are in the world, to be more understanding of other cultures and to be more accepting of the intriguing and interesting nature of human difference and human diversity.
One of the biggest difficulties that probably, I guess, people have is the closed mindedness. You can't go to a, you know, there's an expression that says, in Rome, just act or do like Romans. And it makes, that doesn't mean you have to forget who you are, where you're from, and your own culture. But like you just said, I like the word embrace. Let's, you know, when I came to Lafayette, I knew it was going to be, of course, different. And I knew I was going to learn a lot about the Cajun culture, because Baton Rouge doesn't have much of the Cajun culture. You know, it's like between the Creole and the Cajun. It's like the city between New Orleans and Lafayette, you know, kind of. My best advice is you have to really open your brain and your mind. You can't just come with your own ideas from your own culture. And that's, I'm not going to mention maybe names or whatever, but I've seen some people being quite arrogant, being like, no, the way we do things is the best way to do, or the way we think about this is the way people should think. Well, no, I mean, okay, it's good that you have a strong opinion or you feel high about, you know, your own ideas or whatever coming from your culture or the way your guys do things, but that doesn't mean other people do it necessarily really bad. And remember, when you are at their place, you should, to me, make an effort of somehow an integration and understanding, and you would learn a lot from it. Accepting that, you know, they think different, or they live the life differently, or they dress differently, or like, okay, easy example, where I was born and from, it's, you can't have a hat on when you eat. It's like, it's not seen as something really polite or gentleman. And a lot of Cajuns, when they barbecue, they all have their hat on and they dress. And in my culture, we'd be like, "Come on, what are you wearing? Come on, no, this is not elegant enough, and please take that hat off of your." And I'm like, "Well, look, no, that's how they do here. That doesn't mean they're country with a negative connotation. It's just how they do it. Who are we to judge anyway?" So I would say, do not be judgmental. Be absolutely open-minded, because you will learn and get a lot from it. Your experience will be different if you're really open to it. You come to their place, well then, if they open their arms to you, open yours and your brain and your mind too. You will, that's how you will have an amazing experience. And do not think that your culture is superior or whatever. Just don't.
When you interview people, you give questions that you want the other person to answer. But I also want to make sure that people in this interview series feel as though they've been able to express everything they've wanted to express and not feel as though I should have said this, I could have said that. So what is one thing that you'd like to express that you haven't had a chance to express during the interview that we've done?
First of all, I did like this interview, and I think what you guys are doing, is really awesome. And I just support 100% all those people giving their time and their energy for something that looks to me really, really interesting. Now, I want to express also, well, my gratitude to life, to, some people are believers, then to God, to just the chance that I've had to be selected by the Code of Field 8 years ago, everything that has happened in between in those 8 years, good, or let's say, I'm not going to say the word bad, or maybe more, let's say less good, or experiences that you might sometimes even learn more from, even if they sound kind of negative, but you can always take a good outcome out of course. It's always something good out of it anyway, or a good lesson to learn, from it. So I want to express a lot of gratitude and a lot of love for Louisiana people, the Louisiana state. Yeah, love and gratitude. I think these are important stuff.
And the very last question I wanted to ask, you're from Brussels. I have always had interest in going to Brussels because since I was an international studies major at the University of New Orleans, learning about the European Union, and I like cities. Let's just say we're able to go to Brussels, your hometown, your stomping grounds. Where would you take me? What would you do? Where should we go?
Thanks God it's not as big as Paris, so because I wouldn't know where to start, if it was such a huge town. But I would definitely make you try the moule frite, which is some mussels and fries. It's #1 dish in Brussels, and probably in Belgium too. I would take you, of course, to what we call the historical square of Brussels, called La Grande Place. You've probably heard about what we call the peeing boy, mannequin piece, that little statue, or the guy that keeps on. He has an eternal #1, I want to say, because it's so mythic and it tells you so much about this Belgian. Like, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Can you imagine that one of our symbols is a guy peeing? What other country can claim something like that? France would know, but it is what it is. It's called mannequin piss, as you hear it. We're kind of funny in a way, I would definitely show you the Atomium, which is to me underrated monument because it's really impressive. Represents an atom of I think it's iron. No, that was magnified like 1,000 times, but it's very impressive. It's less tall than the Eiffel Tower, but it is to me more interesting in terms of architecture and what it represents. I would make you try some beers if you drink alcohol. Definitely some Belgian Westmalle or Lef or whatever, the Brussels Creek, any type, blonde, fruit beer, whatever, brown beers from the monks, from Abbey. I would make you try what we call the Brussels waffle, because when people say Belgian waffle, what they don't know is that we got two different types. We got the one from Liège, which is a town in the French-speaking part of Belgium. We got the ones from Brussels, which are slightly different because they're light and usually add stuff on it. When the Liège waffle is like that heavy, tons of sugar, and they're both great. It depends how hungry you are. So I would definitely make you try some chocolates, and of course you would get the Belgian fries with the mayo on top, just like in the movie. What's the name of that movie of Tarantino? When they're like, yeah, Belgian and Dutch people are so hardcore that they put mayo on the fries. I can't remember the name of that movie. But anyways, that's exactly how we do. We put the mayo right on top of the fries and then we eat them. That's just how we do. Pulp Fiction, that's it. The movie was called Pulp Fiction. I would show you, so the main square called the Grand Place. I would take you to Rue des Bouchers. So the butcher streets, tons of restaurants, that narrow paved street, very old. You would see the old Dutch inspired architecture, what we call the stair roof. So all the roofs of the houses look really like a stairs like this, ending up as a triangle. It's very typical from northern cities in the Netherlands and in Belgium. I would take you to the museum of the comic strip, to see about the Smurfs, Lucky Luke, Boulet Bill, Tintin, all those Marsupilami, all those amazing Belgian cartoons characters. very iconic. Cinquantenaire, which is our version of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. I would show you the Palace of the King. If you come in July, you can visit it. Not the one where he lives, the one where he spends most of his days, but that's not the one where he sleeps at. Yeah, all kings got like 2 castles. It's good to be the king. Yeah, I would make you walk through what's called Mini Europe. It's like a huge maquette place with every European major iconic monuments. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think that would definitely be a nice weekend or a 3-day weekend in and the European institution. Of course, you said you like Europe, so I would show you, of course, the European Parliament, all that stuff. You know, the Council of Europe. It's quite impressive. You know, big buildings, but the architecture is interesting. If you like what's authentic and genuine, I would take you Les Marolles, which is the old fleas market where you can hear some true Brussels people that still speak what we call the Brussels dialect. A lot of Dutch influence in it. Extremely authentic. Extremely.
That's like a whole week in Brussels. Like, I'm excited already. So waffles. Have you had a chance to go to Waffle House? And if so, what was your thoughts?
All right. I went once. Please, no offense, but I'm not going a second time. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. But on the other hand, I went to La Madeleine, and I can go back today. I think they do an amazing job at their creme brulee or croque monsieur, whatever. I think they're a compliment to the French culture. But places like Waffle House, I mean,
IHOP has waffles.
well, I was less disappointed by IHOP, let's say. But you know, it's what they call Belgian waffle. You know, it's just in a way they represent us. So I want to thank you for that, because people get to associate the name Belgian with the name waffle. So in a way, they promote our culture. But what you get in your plate might not be a realistic, you know. It's gonna sound stupid, but if you want a true real pizza, go to Italy. You want to eat your real true baguette, go to Paris. You want a real waffle, go to Brussels, you know, or Liège, which is also an interesting city, by the way.
But don't go to Waffle House.
I would not recommend it, but if you can't afford the plane ticket, then Waffle House could be, you know, an in-between solution.
In their defense, they don't market their waffles as Belgian waffles.
When you think about it, you see more Belgian stuff. Even let's say you go to Walmart, or you will see Godiva, you will see the Biscoff, you know, the Biscoff spread, the Belgian beers. Of course, French have the wine or the champagne, but Belgium is actually, compared to the size of the country with France, it's pretty well represented. Even when you go to Barnes and Nobles, you see those Godiva Belgium chocolate on the counter, but it says Belgium, so people get to see the word Belgium, you know, or like Belgian wheat style for Blue Moon beers, for example, or Belgian style when you buy an American beer. But you get to see the word Belgian. And to sum it up, this guy in San Francisco, he has a restaurant called Café Crêpe, whatever. I believe he's American, but huge. On his little on the wall, I guess, from the outside, he says Belgian fries. And every Belgian person that I know that go to San Francisco, they take a picture because they're like, wow, finally someone who knows the truth, finally someone very smart and honest about the origin of the fries, you know. So that's an interesting place to check in San Francisco. You can't miss it. Belgian fries.
I got 2 places to go once this pandemic is a wrap: Brussels and San Francisco. So thank you so much for participating in this interview and sharing your story and being so authentic and open about everything. Hopefully this was a great opportunity for you to share your story and express yourself. If anybody from the Belgian government is watching this interview, I don't know if that will be likely, but who knows, then they'll hire you as their marketing for tourism and all that good stuff.
Who knows?
Because you're making me want to empty my bank account and get a plane ticket to Belgium now. Although,
thank you.
With the pandemic, that's not going to happen. But
honestly saying, it's a country that's definitely worth a visit. And if you have time, if you can make it to Bruges, Antwerp, Namur, Liège, trust me, it's a country that is definitely interesting in a lot of ways. Small but interesting.
Fun size.
There we go. Let's put it this way. Fun size.